My teenage daughter me from her wedding because I wasn't supportive. So I froze my credit card. Now her dream wedding turned into a financial nightmare and her husband is begging me for help. Hi, 55 meters. I'm a single father of a 19-year-old daughter who's determined to make every wrong decision possible. I thought I'd done my part in raising her to be smart, careful and self-reliant, but apparently none of that sank in. Here I am watching her marry a guy who's a walking red flag and wrecking her life and mine. Maybe this is just one of those tough love stories, but honestly, I'm at my breaking point. Here are the details. Warning, it's a long one, but I think some of you might find it worth the read and maybe give some advice. My daughter Meg has all the potential in the world, but no desire to use it. She took a 2-year break from high school, in her words, to find herself. She's always been average in studies, but she enjoys sports. We supported her in everything she wanted to do. Be it her passion for football or baseball, we always had her back. That's why when she said she wanted an education break in high school, we supported her. Apparently she felt overwhelmed by the vast curriculum. We thought not every child moves forward at the same pace, so if she needs time, let's give her that. But those years turned out to be the toughest of my life. Initially, she said she would focus on her game. I expected her to spend more time in practice or on the grounds, but she gave the same 2 hours as she used to. She spent the rest of the day watching TV, strolling around the town with the wrong people, and throwing tantrums whenever she was called out. She would even sneak out after I fell asleep. Once she stole my car and was about to sneak out of town, but was caught by a traffic cop just in time. I did everything to bring her back on the right track. She has been seeing a therapist for many years, on and off. It took me multiple rounds of late-night talks, counselors, and endless gadgets to convince her to return to school and finish her education. I thought we turned a corner and she was finally ready to get her life on track. But as it turns out, that's when the real trouble started. Soon after going back to school, Meg met a guy named Tyler. He's 26 and works as a baker's assistant, delivering pastries to her school's cafe. Nothing against the guy's job. Honest work is honest work. But Tyler, without digging too much, let's just say he's aimless. No plans, no real goals. Just a we'll see what happens attitude. Worse, he has been a player. He had been married once, when he was 21 and the girl was 20. They got separated within 6 months because they realized it wasn't working, and my daughter has fallen head over heels for this guy. Apparently, he was dating Meg's classmate and then suddenly got introduced to Meg, and they hit it off, as they say. I was still okay and respectful until it was casual dating, but then she dropped the bombshell. They were getting married. At first, I thought she was just messing with my head because sometimes I get too nosy asking her details about the relationship. Understand this. I'm a single dad of a teenager who's such a rebel. Or maybe she was blackmailing me to get something. But when she told me the details, I absolutely freaked out. They'd even finalized the date, which is next month. She was serious. I was dumbfounded at her decision. She went on about how they were soulmates and that age doesn't matter. In fact, according to her, nothing matters. She's blinded by this fantasy, so swept up in the idea of romance that she can't see reality staring her in the face. She's 19, he's 26. She hasn't even finished high school yet and has no plans for the future. The guy hasn't even completed middle school, doesn't have a proper job, works as a delivery guy for his parents' bakery, and here they are planning their wedding. I asked her, do I have any say in this? She said I was just allowed to smile and give her away graciously if I wanted to attend the wedding. She kind of said I was lucky to have been informed about the wedding. Some of her friends didn't even tell their parents about the wedding until it was done. I asked her if he even had a house, and she tells me that he lives in a studio but is planning to move into a 1-bedroom apartment. I said, the two of us live in a 3-bedroom house with a walk-in closet. Do you think you'd be able to live in a studio? She snapped at me saying, why not? I hang out here all the time, why can't I live there? You guys have an answer to this? I was done at this point. Hanging out and living are two different things. I tried to knock sense into her, saying that she's yet to complete school, she still lives with me and survives on my credit card. How the heck is she going to adjust to a new and frugal life? She was in no mood to listen. She said she's going to marry whether I like it or not, even if that means hitting City Hall helplessly. I said I wanted to meet the guy first. She has agreed to fix a meeting this weekend. Honestly, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to say. I mean, she tells me she's an adult and she can do whatever she wants. Legally, yes. But 19 is still not the right age to marry. At least not in our culture. I immediately called up Meg's mother, and she's another being who just doesn't care about her daughter. She's too busy in her own world. Meg's mother and I divorced years ago and became co-parents. She soon got remarried, which didn't go down well with Meg. Their relationship got bitter when, within a year of her marriage, she gave birth to a baby girl. Meg felt insecure and neglected upon the baby's arrival. Then a year later, she gave birth to twin boys. Since then, she has no time at all for Meg. Not to make it worse for Meg, I never dated anyone. I never took matters beyond a couple of dates. I knew she couldn't take it. I became her support system, her constant pillar, while her mother was too busy raising her 3 kids. However, over the last couple of years, precisely after she dropped out of high school, I saw Meg bonding with her mother. It was a relief until I realized the ex was just playing a good cop to compensate for her absence and be in Meg's good books. She blindly supported her decision while I became the lecturing dad. She suddenly became Meg's favorite parent, though she barely spent time at her house. I thought maybe if her mom sat her down, it would knock some sense into her. After all, her mother has become the cool parent in Meg's eyes. So I reached out to my ex-wife. She agreed to talk to Meg, but her heart wasn't really in it. She said, if they're in love, we should support them. I was floored. Support them? Support a marriage between a girl barely out of high school and a man without a real job, not even a plan. We both knew that Meg wasn't ready, but her mom just didn't want to deal with the conflict and sugar-coated her words. Their talk solved nothing. Except that she volunteered to help Meg with a wedding prep. Now I'm conflicted. Or not exactly. I know what I want. I don't want this wedding to happen. But how do I stop it? Can I get some advice on how to deal with this? Took a dramatic turn. We'll come to it. It started off when I decided to call in reinforcements. My mother, Meg's grandmother. She's always been sharp and practical. In her late 70s, she's a tough, no-nonsense lady who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. She agreed to come over and talk to Meg. I called for a family meeting, hoping a collective voice from everyone might set her on the right path. When Grandma sat Meg down, she didn't hold back. Marriage isn't just about love. It's about commitment, responsibility, and planning. What do you and Tyler have planned for your future? Have you thought about finances, earnings, family planning? Do you have savings for emergencies? Do you both even earn enough to have a roof over your head? Meg sat there looking uncomfortable, but Grandma didn't let up. She even shared stories about her own struggles, how hard it was in her day to balance family and finances, hoping to make Meg see that love alone wasn't enough. But Meg just crossed her arms and gave her the same line she gave me. Times have changed. You don't understand. I know what I'm doing. It was like talking to a brick wall. My mom was frustrated and left saying to me on her way out, she's got to learn the hard way. It's the only thing left. I went to meet Tyler one-on-one to see what he was made of. We sat down at a diner and I hit him with a big question. What are your future plans? He shrugged and said, we'll figure it out as we go along. Love is more important than money. I wanted to smack him. It took every ounce of restraint not to lose my temper. I tried to explain that marriage isn't just. I wanted to give him a chance to show me he had a plan, that he could take care of my daughter. But he just sat there nodding along like he was listening when it was clear he wasn't. I tried to insinuate the disaster ahead of their mindless decision. I even suggested they date for a few years and then if everything went fine, they could marry. I put a dagger in my heart and said they could probably live together for a few months before taking the plunge. But none of my suggestions seemed like good options to them. Besides this, every time I said something in a stern voice, I got an angry glare from Meg. Amidst this, Tyler mentioned that even his parents dreaded this marriage. That gave me a ray of hope that maybe if I talked to them, we could stop this mess. I invited his parents for dinner the next day. They arrived very humble and hard-working people. They echoed my thoughts. They also think it's a bad idea to get married. I realized they too were in a difficult spot like me. After they left, Meg unleashed her anger on me. She said, you let me down by voicing your concerns about my marriage. I said, I was just discussing this stuff. But she was in her own world. She said, you're trying to ruin my life and I won't let you. She got so furious that she me from the wedding. If you can't be supportive, you better stay away from it. I stopped her and asked, do you hear yourself? She replied, of course I do. I don't want a grumpy sad face to ruin my beautiful day. I was appalled by her words. I asked, you don't mean it, do you? She clarified, I mean every word of it. You're from my wedding because you're not supportive. She stormed into a room saying she didn't want to be around negative energy that didn't believe in her happiness. I was heartbroken. It was a knife in my chest. I was left with no choice but to accept it. She didn't want me there, so I wouldn't go. But I wasn't about to bankroll a wedding I wasn't welcome at. I froze the credit card. Yes, she had been planning a wedding with my money. Why should I pay for a wedding where I'm within hours? She was blowing up my phone, screaming that I ruined everything. She accused me of being selfish and trying to control her life. I told her calmly that if she wanted to make adult decisions, she'd have to deal with the adult consequences. She went to her mother and asked her to pitch in. Meg really thought her mother, a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids with her husband as the sole provider, was going to pitch in for her wedding. Well, joke's on her. Her mother shed a few tears of helplessness and turned down her request. Meg had already off her last option. Her grandma. My mother is the last person to fund this wedding. I don't know what she's going to do now, but my instinct says they're going to marry. Even if it's a city hall wedding. The disaster is imminent. She's not talking to me. We're avoiding each other in the house as the wedding date is approaching. My heart is sinking. It's just a matter of days before she leaves the house. This day would have eventually arrived, but I didn't want to part with her on such a conflicted note. I think what's the most painful part, though, is that she's choosing to ignore everything I've taught her in favor of this fantasy of love.